February 15th, 2025. Well, the month's half over now, huh? And I want to get into something on another thing that kind of a takeoff on some of the Trump initiatives. And this one, of course, is his order to declassify the records on the assassination of JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King Jr. And of course, the thing I've have the most studying of and focused on was the JFK assassination. I've dabbled a little bit on the RFK and some of those fun conspiracy theories. Those are a little bit more esoteric. They involve things like you either believe it is as everybody says, or maybe it's like MK Ultra and that kind of. You get into that world. So, and I don't know. There are also some mysteries I think on the Martin Luther King assassination and that sort of thing, or it may be straight out just a racist attack. But anyway, let's get it's the JFK that has a lot more political significance and constitutional significance in a lot of things, because there's a general idea that he, in the conspiracy world at least, that he fell into a situation where he was so opposed by so many members of the intelligence and national security community that somehow something really bad happened there. And of course, in the mainstream viewpoint, it is personified in the Warren Commission report. And of course, Gerald Posner summarized this pretty well in his book, Case Closed, Lee Harvey Oswald and the JFK assassination. Pretty well represents the viewpoint of officialdom, I guess, as of now, that there was one lone gunman. Okay. And then, of course, like I say, you've got the conspiracy people. I've been reading a book called The Last Second in Dallas by Josiah Thompson, which, and apparently he also was the author of another book, which I haven't read, but apparently it was one of the classics on it, 6 Seconds in Dallas, with the same author back in 1967, and which he had been hired by Time Life magazine to do a study of it, which eventually they kind of went in a different direction, I guess. But he was left after a certain date, I think July the 1st of 67. He was allowed to go off and use his own research he'd obtained during his association with them and write his own book, which held to the idea that there were two shooters and there was a conspiracy. And so that's kind of where we are on this. And I want to I've run into something on this myself, and I don't have a solution yet. I'm still studying his latest book, The Last Minute in Dallas, which he has some interesting new viewpoints that he's come to. And I'm not so much going to get into that. He still believes in multiple shooters. And I tend to go that way myself. But basically, let's go into the situation. I've run into a major paradox in this situation, which is almost impossible to resolve. And that is, when you really, the key thing that any hardcore conspiracy person has to have, in which Lee Harvey Oswald is involved, is how can a conspiracy place Lee Harvey Oswald in the 6th floor of the book depository building there in Dallas, in order to accomplish the assassination. And when you look at the history of how he got there, and I'm getting this from like Posner's book, and there's another video on this also. Watched a lot of YouTube videos on this type of thing, and over the years, I mean, over the last 5 years probably, at least, and essentially, there's a major problem with that, and it's the following. How he got there was, basically he was estranged at the moment from his wife from Russia, and he had a child there with her, but they were estranged, and she was living with Ruth Payne, who was kind of a family friend and maybe benefactor actually, and according to conspiracy people, some kind of a CIA operative or whatever. I don't know. Probably not an officer, but maybe an asset. At any rate, but the point of the matter is that's what the conspiracy people say. On the other hand, she's just a nice person, I guess, from her point of view. At any rate, Lee Harvey Oswald, because he had had defected to Russia or Soviet Union was in those days. I think they should say it properly. It's nothing like the Russian Federation exactly, I don't, my opinion, but the point is, although the Russian part is, he was actually in what's today Belarus, actually, I think, when he was over there, the Soviet Union. And at any rate, when he came back, he didn't seem to have any problems. I'm not going to go into all the background there. But ultimately, the bureaucracy at some point had decided, well, they'd change his honorable discharge from the Marine Corps to dishonorable, which in fact I think is improper because at the time he was discharged from the Marine Corps, which was before he defected, well, I don't know. We can argue that, but he was very upset with this, and this led to him having a lot of employment problems, and so he found himself searching for a job much in vain. And so how he ends up in the book depository, sixth floor area potentially, well, is that a guy named Frazier who lived in his neighborhood had a sister, and he'd gotten a job up there because apparently they were having a lot of work to do that time of the year, and his sister was having a coffee with Ruth Paine and Maria Oswald. And they got into discussion of the fact that, well, he just got this job up there at the book depository building, and the thought came up in their conversation, well, maybe Oswald can get one there too. And so so she calls I guess the foreman or whatever that hires people there, and said, could they find a place for him? And they said, well, send him right over and we'll see. And so they send him right over, and he gets a job there. Apparently, from his Marine demeanor, he refers to the man as sir and seems respectful, and he claimed he was honorably discharged. He doesn't mention that. I guess there was no background check, and he gets hired. And that's how he gets in the book depository building. Now, the question I have is here. And this is a testimony of all the people that were interviewed for the Warren Commission. In other words, including the sister of this Frazier guy, and so forth. And in fact, once he went to work, he actually went with Frazier. He hitched a ride with Frazier to work. So how could any cabal, the CIA, the mafia, the Castro, anti-Castro Cubans, whoever wanted to do this assassination, how could they possibly have arranged for something like this to occur? And so he's there, and so the general official position is that that when he found out at the last minute that the presidential motorcade was going to go by his window, he thought it would be a good time to bring his rifle to work that day, and the rest was history. So anyway, if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, and you click the bell for notifications. And or if you want to follow me on Rumble, I have the address of Rumble's in the description below also. So whichever. Yeah. So okay, that's the official version. Okay, and it makes sense. It stands up, except for one thing. There's a lot of evidence that there was a shooter on the grassy knoll. And there's witnesses that saw a lot of suspicious behavior there. People thought they saw a sign of a gun being fired. There was a little smoke coming off afterwards. When people went to the area right afterwards, and it had rained that day, there was a lot of footprints in the ground right behind where the shooter was supposed to be. There was like mud on the bumpers of cars that were parked back up there, so that it looks like they may be using that for whatever vantage point or whatever. And a lot of cigarette butts left there too. So it seemed like people were there, and a couple of people there. And not only that, when after the shooting, a police officer, pistol drawn, ran up the hill, thinking that's where the shots came from, and encountered a man who presented a Secret Service badge, and therefore the guy assured him that there's nobody to see here, and so essentially that apparently was able to cover for the retreat of the shooter, and so that's why the guy got away. And the only problem with that is, and this is the Warren Commission even agrees with this, that there were no Secret Service agents on the ground in that location. So one would tend to think that anybody like that is a phony. There's also other cases if you get deeper into some of these videos, there is an individual who claims he's the person that made fake Secret Service badges and delivered them and put them in a pickup truck and locked the door so that somebody else could pick them up and have them. So, but okay, we'll leave that part for what it was. But the key point that is official is that the Warren Commission itself says there were no Secret Service people there, yet the police officer reported seeing somebody presenting that badge. And there's also pictures that show an image of somebody there. The Zapruder film seems to show an impact that would and a splatter pattern from the shooting, which would indicate that there was a bullet coming in from the front, and so, and it gets into a bit of the details, about that. But the case for that is pretty strong, actually. Plus, there was a event back in 1978 where the House had a committee to investigate these assassinations, and they did an acoustic study where they actually brought a similar rifle, I think a Carcano rifle, just like was supposedly used, and did a bunch of shots and had microphones around the area and tried to look, where a shot from the knoll and a shot from the book depository, 6th floor, and seeing which one had the best statistical significance. And that study only showed that there were likely to be 5 shots fired. And you get into a situation where, okay, so now we have 5 shots fired. There's 3 shell casings left on the 6th floor where Oswald was supposed to be. So now we're looking at, well, then where the other 2 shots come from, and that gives you the possibility of a grassy knoll scenario. And it gets a little more complicated because of some details, which I don't have time to get into here. Maybe you don't want to hear all of that. But let's just stick with 5 shots from the acoustics. And there were studies which showed that the bullets might have all been from the same gun, but then later on, years later, the FBI renounced that methodology used to show that, and it found out that it was invalid and it's no longer used by the FBI. Circa, I think it was 2005 when they finally fully renounced it. So that meant that it's quite possible that different bullets were involved, and there are issues of bullets and fragments and all that. So the point I'm getting to is we have a case, therefore, that there were 2 shooters. We also have a solid case that Lee Harvey Oswald seems to have all the characteristics of a lone gunman, and it's unclear how he could have been placed into that position. Now, one Canada stretch, and I could concoct, in fact, I just did tonight talking to a friend, a scenario which is really off the wall where maybe you could explain this in a way, but you'd have to have somebody, rearranging where the parade route was going to be. They would have to know that Oswald was there. They'd have to, well, there's a lot of things you'd have to, it doesn't make a lot of sense, actually. It looks to me like that Oswald did just get a wild hair idea to do an assassination. And had the rifle, and the Fraser guy said he brought something in a package to work that day, which he claimed were curtain rods. As far as I know, no curtain rods were actually found left behind, and it doesn't look like he left with anything in his hand when he left the building after the assassination occurred, and went home and got his pistol and went out to see a movie and allegedly shot a police officer on the way to the movie because he was being questioned. So not only that, but he also left, I think, his wedding ring and most of his cash he had, with little, but he did have some for his wife before he took off. So it all looks like he didn't expect to make it back very well, and we could get into all these. Anybody that knows all the conspiracy theories could go into what all the possibilities were there, but it looks to me like he was a lone gunman. And therefore, the people on the grassy knoll, or if there were any other shooters in the area, because there is a possibility of a third individual in some scenarios, although I'm not saying there are, but and so those people that had fake Secret Service IDs to protect them, and had escape plans and everything else, and a concealed sniper position with a possibility of escape. they were part of, I guess you'd say, a conspiracy of a sort, because there was two people there, so it's more than one person involved. It's maybe a spotter or a cover person with the badge, at least, and there were other people that prevented the badge, so it's a conspiracy. So the point I've come up with a novel idea. Everybody's assumed if there's two shooters, they have to be coordinated. But I'm thinking maybe evil minds worked in the same direction that day. That in fact there was a conspiracy to shoot Kennedy from the grassy knoll, and potentially maybe even another building. I won't get into that, but there is a theory that it could have been one from another building, a Deltec building perhaps. And that in the middle of that, a lone gunman, Oswald, showed up and actually opened fire first. And this first shot, apparently, according to Posner, and this is probably likely to be true, glanced off a light pole or some kind of pole, metal pole, and hit a curb across the way, sending up a fragment that nicked a person in the face. And that was the first shot fired. And then after that, apparently, somebody fired two more shots that hit Connolly and then hit Kennedy, and then the grassy knoll shooter at least fired one fatal shot. The final one, well, if there's one more shot, we're not sure where that came from, and that may be two from the grassy knoll, or it could be a third shooter from maybe this last shot had to be fired from behind, though, according to the Josiah Thompson book, The Last Second in Dallas. So I'm proposing a really novel idea here I've never heard anywhere before. That a conspiracy was there on the ground, and a lone gunman showed up and opened fire first, and did part of the assassination, and then at least definitely hit Connolly because of the bullet, which is now called a magic bullet. That one apparently did go into Connolly, and there's more to that story. I won't get into all the details, but the point I'm getting to is, they were acting alone, I think. I think Oswald really did just show up and do this because he was down his luck and probably figured that was one of these kind of crazy people that do this to make a name for themselves or something. And then of course, once that happened, he was a very convenient, if you will, a patsy, if you will, not really a patsy because he was guilty, certainly of attempted murder, probably murder, or at least coordinating in it. But he probably didn't know the other people at all that were going to do that, and it was easy then for the FBI and the Warren Commission to put all the blame on him, because they didn't want to be in a position probably to follow who really did that there was a presidential assassin that was loose at large and had not been, and the thing was, I think there'd be a consider that maybe the Cubans did it, and therefore that might lead to an invasion of Cuba, which was, remember, we'd made a deal with Kennedy not to invade Cuba in return for removing the missiles, which could set off a confrontation that Johnson didn't want, particularly once he became president. But at any rate, we don't know what the why of it, but at any rate, Oswald got the blame for everything, but in reality, somebody else was definitely involved in the murder as well. Anyway, that's my theory I'm throwing out there. It's a little different, but I think it fits the fact, because I don't see how you actually get Oswald to be in that building as part of a conspiracy, and it's hard to know they would even know he would be there. So anyway, that's my theory. I just thought I'd lay that out there for everybody, and as always, I'll be putting this on YouTube and Rumble, and the address of my social media accounts are in the description below, so all for now. Let me know what you all think of this one. That's a little different than what people normally have been saying.